Welcome to the third virtual session of Leadership Southeast Georgia. I'm Suzanne Kirk. I'm the LSEGA program facilitator, and I'm excited to have both our 2020 class members join us, as well as our speakers that I'll introduce in a moment. And I think we've got some site coordinators and board members. We'll also be recording this session for those that are unable to join us live. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome. So today is Thursday, April 16th. If you, like me, are losing track of some of the days, that's where we are. And this is our third virtual session. You know, the board and myself and our administrator, Cynthia, are doing our best to bring you, as the 2020 class members, the most full LSEGA experience that we can in this totally different world. So we're excited to bring you this third LSEGA virtual session. So our topic today is to explore the economic impact to our regional businesses from various perspectives, specifically a tourism perspective, a nonprofit perspective, and a general business kind of perspective as a result of this global pandemic. You know, obviously we're seeing some very significant impacts to various businesses and our economy of our region and our country, of course, overall, already in this process. So we're very fortunate to have a great group of panelists with us today that can share their perspectives. Before I introduce the panel and get into our program, I just wanted to remind you of a few housekeeping items and put this session in context. So if you've not already, as you're joining us, I see we've got 25 people on today's webinar. So please make sure that you mute your microphone unless you are speaking, and please mute your videos so that everybody can find active cameras. So if you are a participant on here live, if you go to the top of your screen, it probably says view everyone, and there's a drop down arrow next to that. If you click on that and say view active cameras, it will make it much easier for you to find who our speakers are throughout the program, rather than scrolling through a gallery view, for example. We have pulled participant questions from our previous two evaluations. So thank you so much to our class members that are completing those evaluations. Just a reminder, you will receive a link via email to an eval after every program. And as you know, we really look forward to your feedback and we take it very seriously. It's been very helpful in shaping our future sessions. So many of the questions that we'll be posing to the panel today specifically came from questions that our class participants indicated they would like answered during this time. So we are thankful for your participation via that mechanism and encourage you, when you do see the next eval link, please take a moment to give us your feedback as well. That would be great. So just a reminder, as you're joining us, please mute your microphones, and if you mute your camera as well, you can go to the top and view active cameras, and that way you can more easily find our speakers. So let me go ahead and set the stage for today's topic and today's session, and then we'll introduce our panelists and dive into asking them some questions. So, you know, exploring economic development has been an integral component of the Leadership Southeast Georgia program for as long as I've been involved, since 2013, I'm sure in the duration of the entire program. And with intent, we look at all sides of economic development, both of the strengths in our region and the issues and opportunities as well, based on our current realities. And so certainly during this pandemic, our reality is one that I don't think any of us could have possibly anticipated. And all of us are experiencing impacts in many ways, both personally, professionally. The companies with whom we work, we're seeing that some businesses and industries have certainly had a very extreme impact from this pandemic than others, and many look to an uncertain business future. And in our first virtual session of this new world of Leadership Southeast Georgia on April 2nd, we discussed the HR perspective on the impact of this pandemic. And in that week, we were looking at a record high DOL unemployment applicants of 6.6 million people, and I saw a headline this morning that we're now over 22 million applicants for unemployment, and I think that is a sad indicator of the realities of what's happening to our economy across the country. So I hear some people joining us. If you are joining us either by a phone or any device and have not muted your microphone, if you could please go ahead and mute your mic, that would be great. A few statistics to set the stage as well. I don't know if you received the Georgia Chamber emails, but if you don't, you should. There's great information in there. And last week on April 8th, the Georgia Chamber CEO, Chris Clark, shared a few statistics that I thought were interesting to set the stage for our discussion today about economic development and the impact of this pandemic. So some of these statistics were that Georgia is experiencing a decline of 20% in daily GDP, according to Moody Analytics. That over 50% of American small businesses have less than 15 days cash on hand, and that's per a JP Morgan Chase survey. And that 54% of all small businesses are reporting they have closed or could close within the coming weeks, and 43% of small businesses say they are 3 to 6 months away from permanently shutting down, according to the U.S. Chamber. So these are shocking statistics that are pretty scary, but that we need to acknowledge and we need to prepare for as we consider the economics of our region. So today we're thankful to have speakers from various industries speak to their perspectives on the reality that we are in today regarding our economy. So let me go ahead and introduce our speakers. So first of all, Bryn Grant. You know Bryn because she is our chair of Leadership Southeast Georgia, our board chair. She's also a graduate of the Leadership Southeast Georgia class of 2015. She's currently the president and CEO of United Way of the Coastal Empire. She joined in February of this year, rolling right into a very difficult time to be a new leader in any organization, let alone in a nonprofit organization. And prior to that, she for many years was the COO at SEDA, the Savannah Economic Development Authority, and also the VP of World Trade Center Savannah. She serves on various boards and nonprofits in our community, and I am thrilled to welcome Bryn Grant as one of our panelists today. Hi, Bryn.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brant Herndon, and Brant is the Chief Executive Officer for the Effingham County Industrial Development Authority. He's responsible for the development and implementation of marketing and business development action plans to attract prospects to Effingham County. He was previously the vice president at SEDA, so I guess you and Bryn know each other, at the Savannah Economic Development Authority, and was also the president and CEO of the Fayette County Development Authority. Prior to that, he's a native of Macon, Georgia, and he holds his degree from University of Georgia and his master's from Georgia State University. So I don't know if you can see my diploma on the wall. So welcome, Brant. We are glad to have you with us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, and then we have Jennifer Davis. Jennifer is the Chief Information Officer for Ag South Farm Credit. For 26 years you've been there. You were a baby when you joined, clearly. And for our class members, we were very fortunate to visit Ag South, and they were one of our sponsors and one of our hosts last session. So thank you for that, Jennifer. Jennifer is also part owner of a small business in Statesboro, the Sugar Magnolia Bakery and Cafe.
Ooh.
So yes. So I think you bring such great background and perspective for this session, Jennifer, because you bring the Chief Information Officer in a banking environment in an agricultural focused community, and also part owner of a small business. What great perspective you bring to our panel this morning. I had to Google Uvalde, Georgia. So Jennifer is born and raised in Uvalde, Georgia, and I think it said the population is less than 600. And I think you bring that small town perspective. I love it. And she is a Leadership Southeast Georgia graduate of the class of 2014, and is also very involved in her community in Bullitt County and various boards and nonprofits. So thank you, Jennifer, for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And then I don't know if Michael has joined us. I don't see him live on camera. I know he had an event this morning, but hopefully he'll be able to join us. Michael is the, well, now I've just lost where his bio is. Thank you. He's the president and CEO of the Tourism Leadership Council, and I knew that. And he has worked for many high-end hotel properties in the past, and he was appointed to serve as a permanent member of the Tourism Advisory Committee, and he's on the executive committee of the Savannah Area Chamber of Commerce and many other nonprofits in town. And he's a graduate of the Leadership Southeast Georgia class of 2018. So hopefully Michael will be able to join us, because I know the tourism industry is certainly suffering in our local economy. So welcome to all of our panelists, and thank you again for being here. So if we could just dive right into some of our questions. And as a reminder to the class, we have incorporated many of the questions that you listed on your evaluations from the previous 2 sessions into our panel format today. But if you have additional questions that come up, I welcome you to please use the chat feature. It should be at the top right-hand corner of your screen, and it's a little chat bubble. If you want to enter a question, you can enter it privately so that it just comes to me, or you can enter it publicly, whatever your preference is that makes you feel comfortable asking questions, and we'll work to incorporate those into our discussion. All right, so let's just dive in. If we could go around and ask just each of you to give us, from your perspective of the business and the industry in which you work, just what is a status update? You know, we had one specific question, Jennifer, I'll come to you first, that came from the class about how are banks holding up? Because I know with these federal loan programs, all of a sudden they're rolling out and the banks are saying we're not ready, and just kind of how banks are doing. But just from all of your perspectives of the different lenses through which you see things, what's your status update of your world right now? And then we'll come to each of our panelists.
Well, it definitely has disrupted us somewhat, but I think it's also helped us become more efficient. The biggest challenge for our company out of the gate was we had 0% telecommuting in our company. So we went from 0% to 80% telecommuting within 48 hours. Luckily, we had the infrastructure to support it and the security mechanisms in place to make it secure and functional. But that was the first hurdle, was just getting people in place and offices staffed still, though, in a safe manner to be able to continue to service customers. The other challenge has been we immediately, like other banks, started with deferral programs, so allowing people 90-day deferrals on their payments. And so, you know, it sounds easy just to let's just extend your payment out 30 days, but you have to do all the documentation to go along with that, get signatures from customers. So we immediately spun up some things to make that more efficient and deliverable to customers in a safe manner. And then the other thing is the SBA loan, you know, SBA payroll protection program. And so we've stood that up as well. The thing about that is some of these banks, if they didn't have the infrastructure to really execute it very quickly, they didn't get those applications ahead of other banks. Their customers are going to not be able to probably get money, because as of yesterday, they were even saying the money was running out. So if they didn't get the applications in early in the game, then they may not be able to get the money. So from a banking perspective, it really is. Its repayment's going to be really tough for some people. Like you said in the statistics, a lot of people don't have that extra income in rainy days like this, and so it's going to be a challenge to see how we can help our customers through this time.
Absolutely. Thank you. I thought it was a great question from the class specifically about, you know, the banking world, because I think you've had to react so quickly, and it's a tough environment for all. Hadn't thought about the telecommuting issue is such a huge component for many businesses, but then you add on the layer of the additional security required to work from a financial institution. I can imagine it's been very challenging. Coming to Brant, how about you? Brant, from the Economic Development Authority perspective, what's your status? What's your world right now look like?
Well, I mean, we're being affected, obviously, just like everybody else. We had a prospect visit that was supposed to happen right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we didn't know if they were going to fly in on the private plane or not. We switched gears at the last minute, put together a Zoom presentation. This was right when I guess everybody was learning about Zoom, and I know Jessica Hood's on the call, but she can't talk right now. But Jessica did a great job putting together that Zoom for us. I think we had, I don't know, 10, 15 people on that call. It took us a lot of time to prepare it, but the reality is that's probably where we're going to be for quite a while, it looks like. So it's going to be the new way of doing economic development. We're just not going to get those visits as much as we were, at least not in the near future. So, but going back to prospects, most everything, we've had several prospects that were very close to signing leases here in Effingham County. They're holding off on signing leases. They're not giving an exact reason or date. They just keep pushing it a little bit further and further. But the other projects that were active in the market have been put on hold. So there's not really anything going on. I mean, we are still filling out RFPs. We are still getting some inquiries from the Department of Economic Development. But for the most part, economic development has always been a slow process. Every year it seems like it's getting slower and slower. It takes longer for a deal to happen. I think this is going to even slow it up. It's going to make it even more slow than it was in the past. So I don't expect between here and the end of the year, I think we'll be lucky. We'll be lucky if we can hopefully close a couple of deals that were very close to being closed up until March or April. I think it'll be late in the year before anything is done. And I just don't think a lot of leases are going to be signed. And I don't blame people. I wouldn't sign a lease or buy a piece of property right now for anything. I would wait and see, how all this is going to shake out, because you could be leaving a lot of money on the table.
Absolutely. You've touched on so much of the new world that we're all facing, especially if you've got a product, that product is land and you're trying to showcase that to people. We're having to go virtual and how we showcase what we can do and meet via Zoom, and then many things just because of the economy and just so much uncertainty. Sounds like they've come to a screeching halt, and I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure.
People do not like uncertainty. We have another group that was talking about buying some property, and look, everybody's buying property has lenders, they have investors. So it's not their money, it's somebody else's money, and nobody's going to put money into the market right now with the uncertainty. So it's just a lot of wait and see, and just try to follow up and keep the communication going. Just
sure.
don't let it, just keep it going.
Absolutely. Bryn, I think you're in such a unique scenario. Being a new leader in the organization, I think is one element of a challenge. I'm sure it's been a fun road for you, but then just the nonprofit perspective. And, I know for many people in our class right now, many of those that are joining us live or via recorded sessions serve on boards in their community. And I think there's such a challenge right now of it's not the appropriate time to be making an ask or to really pushing the mission of those nonprofit organizations. But I think United Way is certainly in a different scenario. So can you give us that overview, that status update from the nonprofit perspective at United Way?
Yes, thank you. I think that one of the most interesting aspects about this whole experience is how it's constantly evolving, and we are all having to create new plans almost every day. It's one of the things we sort of took for granted, I think, is that we all had an infrastructure from which we operated that worked for our entities. And we were all of a sudden, not just United Way, not just nonprofits, but all of you creating entirely new infrastructure for a whole new reality. We stood up very quickly a rapid response fund directly related to the impacts of COVID-19. So our organization obviously raises money all year long, especially during a fall campaign, and we direct those dollars to nonprofits to go through a very rigorous community investment panel process, looking at all the functions and operation of those organizations. Our first concern was, how do we help? First of all, how do we make sure that those agencies, so many of which are on the front lines in a situation like this, in an event like this, how do we try to make sure that those pledges from last year's campaign are coming in and that we're able to meet the demands and the needs of those agencies as we've committed to do? And so far, thank goodness, I am so pleased to report that pledges have continued to come in as promised, despite these last 4 to 5 weeks of dramatic economic and health challenge. So we have been able to commit to, for now, that those promises. We were able to lift some of the restrictions, so those nonprofits on the front lines are able to be more flexible with those dollars in this situation. That should help. And we were able to take, which is a little disappointing, we had for the first time in several years an opportunity fund that would have allowed us to maybe invite some new agencies into the United Way process to begin relationships with new nonprofit entities. And we've had to really reallocate those dollars from opportunity and into emergency response for agencies. So those are the ways that we're dealing with and supporting our local nonprofit infrastructure, the social service agencies. Beyond that, we operate a 211 call center that year-round takes calls from people in crisis and tries to match them with the resources in the region. And our first week, I guess the first week that this was really realized, the situation, we had probably 1,200 calls. And on average, usually during the year, we might have about 300. So it really ramped up very fast. Last week, over 5,000. So our first goal is how do we connect them to any resource, state, federal, local, other nonprofits. And then if they qualify, if they can demonstrate loss of income directly related to COVID-19. So you mentioned 22 million people unemployed. Many people can demonstrate that their loss of income is directly related to the pandemic. Then we can work with them on things like rental, rent assistance, mortgage assistance, utilities, food, medical needs, sort of case by case, but they do have to demonstrate that it's COVID-19 related for those emergency funds. So we're raising money and we're getting that money out to the people who need it as fast as we can.
That's been amazing to see the fund that you put together and the amount of money that y'all have raised so quickly. It's encouraging that there are still folks that are willing to jump in and help and can contribute financially to those in need. That's a promising sign.
I've been amazed by that.
Yeah. You mentioned, the spike in calls to 211 services, and I think that's not surprising given what we're seeing in the increasing numbers of those filing for unemployment, whether they be fully unemployed or on a furlough with reduced work hours. Curious from each of you what you're seeing in terms of your workforces that you work with, either from the banking industry or small business, Jennifer, where you are in ag. What are you seeing in terms of impact on the workforce? And then we'll come to each of you.
For our Ag South perspective, we're good, simply because we were able to just shift where we work. The workload's still there. The work is definitely coming in because people are needing us right now. So our workforce has not been impacted whatsoever. Sugar Magnolia, on the other hand, we staffed down from 25 people down to 4. We've changed everything to curbside and delivery. We've had to change our approach on what we were offering. So we're doing a lot of the casseroles and things that you can pick up to bake later, and prepared meals that people can come. So we've completely had to shift our marketing approaches, or what we offer and how we offer it. So from an ag perspective, the farmers, it's mostly just the repayment is going to be the biggest thing. And so if the money's not there, they can't have employees come in and do that. It also can really impact the migrant workers, is a huge concern. In the future, it could even more so do so, because there will be probably some health regulations around who can come in. So the amount of migrant workers coming in to do some of these jobs could be really limited. So there's a lot of concern in the future. Right now, I think we're all hoping this is a temporary, uncomfortable, terrible situation, that in a few months things will switch. The switch will be flipped and everything will be back to normal as usual. But that's probably a little presumptuous. But right now, everybody seems to be okay. We have, Sugar Magnolia is really probably of all those 3 industries that felt it the most.
For sure. Well, and I just got a message. I think we have Michael Owens now with us. Michael, I don't see a camera for you. I don't know if you're in a spot where you're able to be live on video, but are you here with us? There he is.
Hi.
Good morning, Michael. And so thanks for being with us. I know you had a lot going on this morning, so I already did an introduction of you, knowing that you would be here eventually. So as a reminder, folks, Michael Owens is with the Tourism Leadership Council. So the question I was just asking our panelists, Michael, and it's a perfect opportunity for you to jump in, is what we're seeing in each of your respective industries and businesses in terms of impact to the workforce. And so I know in the tourism industry, y'all are having just incredible repercussions already from the pandemic. Can you tell us a little bit about what the impact is that you're seeing to the workforce in the tourism world?
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for having me. My apologies for being late. I was at that food drive to feed those, help feed those folks who've been most negatively impacted by this. I think one of your classmates is Patrick Connell, who's my lawyer, so everybody will understand why I'm late. He has never been on time for anything, and it's rubbing off. Hopefully he's on the call and he can call me
I hope
later.
so. Well, we'll be sure to send him the recorded link just for that highlight.
Great. It's, to be honest with you, it's Suzanne, you know me, I'm not a doomsday sort of guy. I'm a pretty positive person. It's being very candid, it's devastation that I just couldn't have imagined. I just could not have imagined. Our world has come to a halt. Our sector is a leading indicator of both good economic recovery and then poor economics on the horizon. Our industry is most susceptible to the first thing cut out of someone's personal economy or their home economy, and certainly that's proven here. We're just starting to see some of the real economic pictures and things like tax collections, both at the state and local municipalities. And it is true that tourism took the hit before any other industry, and that trickle down and ripple effect is enormous. So when we have fewer customers, farmers have fewer customers, gas stations have fewer customers, grocery stores have fewer customers, bankers have fewer customers. It's an enormous impact. Our workers, it's broad and across the board. There are different folks in different situations. Some are truly teetering on absolute economic devastation that will be difficult at best to recover from. There have been certainly the programs that we've seen out of the Congress and out of the White House have been very, very helpful for many. A lot of the lag there is just the sheer compression of how many people are in need of assistance that have never needed assistance before. Things like getting on board with SNAP benefits and things like that they've never even contemplated before. First, it's a huge blow to someone's ego. It's a huge blow. I mean, our industry is filled with really hardworking men and women in our community who are very prideful about hard work and our service to others. That's what we all do, is we serve others. And so for having to ask for individual help and collective help is difficult for a lot of folks. And we saw a lot of that today. There were a lot of tears today in the food drive that we did with America's Second Harvest. I think the unemployment benefits are certainly helping. There's no doubt about that. For a lot of folks, that federal additional $600 a week has not come through yet. In Georgia, it should be today and tomorrow. So that's a very, very bright spot for folks to look for. Those who are in more management roles and things like that, many certainly, if not most, have been furloughed. There are skeletons in sort of any company, regardless of its size, right? People think that big companies are better prepared to withstand that this type of disruption. That's not necessarily true. Many of the large hoteliers that we work with, they have to maintain certain debt ratios as a part of their loan package for their building. So they can very quickly be at the same financial disadvantage as someone with substantially less capital and substantially fewer assets. This thing has sort of hit everybody. What we're cognizant of is that when this, for a lack of a better term, the switch gets flipped back on, right? Orders get rescinded, and everybody is supposed to be able to a certain extent, go back to a new normal, and that's absolutely how we're referring to it. It's a new normal. For a long time, I don't think you're going to go into a restaurant and get anything other than a piece of paper instead of a printed menu, right? We're going to have to shift how we do things in a very obvious way, so that both customers and employees can understand the seriousness which the industry is taking cleanliness procedures and so on and so forth. We're going to see, I think buffets are gone for a long, long time, probably for the best, by the way. But we're going to see some significant changes, and it's not like the faucet turns on and the pool is filled overnight, right? First of all, the American traveler or the foreign traveler's got to have enough money to travel or want to spend that money on travel, rather than replace savings or invest in other things or be more careful. Certainly, there's been plenty of talk about a threat of a reprisal of this particular virus when the cooler months come back to the South. People are going to be cognizant of that. So it's a question of spending power and spending confidence for the consumer. And that has direct ramifications on how many housekeepers come back to work, how many valets, how many servers, how many dishwashers. And you have to remember, though, our industry does have a lot of entry level positions with folks who do not yet have life skills and job skills and marketable skills that have been developed that's easily convertible to another industry. There's a lot of folks that have found a home and success in our industry because that's where their skill sets lie, and they can move from there. But our housekeepers, our dishwashers, we call them DMOs, dish management operators. They can't just go work for an architecture firm tomorrow. Right. So we've got to return this business, and having an eye on the economic future is responsible. It's responsible. We've got to make sure that we are being very cognizant of the threat of a pandemic. There's no doubt about that. People's lives have been lost. I bet you that everybody on this call knows somebody or knows somebody who knows somebody whose life has been lost as a result of this. We also have a responsibility to ameliorate these negative economic impacts as best we can and get folks back to work, let them provide for their families, let them pay for their education, for their improvement. And we, at some point, we're going to have to get back to that in a very different way than we've ever seen it before.
For sure. You've touched on so many issues, and two of them in particular are great segues. So one, you touched on about what's the new normal, right? I think everybody's asking that question. And from the tourism perspective, I think that's a great example of, maybe we're not using the same laminated menu that gets handed to numerous hands throughout the course of a day is one thing that will change in that industry. But then you also touched on some of the state and federal relief measures for folks. So I want to ask the panel a little bit about that. Brant, maybe I'll come to you first. When you look at the companies that you work with, are you seeing people dive into some of those relief mechanisms? Are people taking advantage of the federal relief aid, the loans, the PPE? What are people doing that you see in terms of some of those relief measurements financially?
Well, the good news is there's maybe after listening to Michael, I mean, that's just terrible hearing what's going on with the tourism, but there is silver lining. A lot of our employees up in Effingham County have been deemed essential business. They are working, they're being very careful, wearing masks, wearing gloves, but a lot of our largest employers is business as usual. The woodworking business, the wood products is suffering a little bit, but our distribution companies are actually looking to hire people. I mean, the distribution is continuing to ongoing and moving. So as of right now, up in Effingham, when it comes to the larger employers, we're doing okay. But what's hurting is people like Jennifer, who are small business owners. As you ride up and down Highway 21, everything's closed down. I mean, the restaurants are trying to survive in the takeout mode. And so those are the people that I see that are struggling. And kind of to Michael's point, everybody knows if you're not on this call being affected personally, you know somebody who's being affected. And I have friends and family members that are struggling to figure out their businesses can stay open. Can they make it a little bit longer? And they've applied for the PPP and they haven't received it yet. And when are they going to get it? There's a lot of anxiety in the market. For example, my brother owns a small real estate company in South Georgia. I mean, he barely made it through the recession, and he put everything he had into make it through the recession and trying to build back up a savings, and then to get hit by something like this that was no fault of his, not overextension of credit and things that a lot of us got in trouble for back in 2008, 2009. This is not anything we've done personally, which makes it even more difficult. So where do we go from here? Can hopefully the money will continue to be funded. I know that the House and the Senate are trying to get together, maybe extend the PPP, need another $350 million. Hopefully they can put politics aside and work together because people's lives are at stake. But anyway, at least here in Effingham County, I think I could speak for our region, Chatham and Bullock and Liberty. I think a lot of the major employers are continuing to work as essential business, which obviously means paychecks and people can pay rent and pay for food and things of that nature. So a little glimmer of hope there.
That is nice to have glimmers of hope wherever we can find them. Bryn, you talked about how your calls to 211 for services have just dramatically increased. And I can imagine that there are a lot of questions regarding some of these relief measures. Is that something that your team is having to be equipped to answer some of those questions or to point people in that direction? How are you navigating some of those questions when it comes to some of these economic injury measures?
We refer to the experts. We are not that. But we definitely, every single day, maintain and update a database of resources and can point people to the right organizations or the right government programs where they can get that kind of direction. Certainly, we were notifying people as soon as the announcements were made about applying for unemployment and the requirement to have your employer apply for you and those things. We were definitely communicating that information to our callers. We've even had in some cases where there have been companies like Kroger or Publix and any information about jobs available and hiring for essential workers. We've been sharing that information as well on through 211. Our biggest calls are the highest number of calls are about housing stability. And people who, like Michael said, who may have been living, definitely standing on their own 2 feet, but with a complete loss of income, now worried about whether or not they can maintain secure housing. So our efforts are really focused on how do we keep those people as safe and as healthy and as stable in housing as we possibly can to bridge this gap until hopefully they can walk back into the workforce. I know for a fact that the programs like PPP have been very helpful in the nonprofit area. There's hope around that. There have been layoffs in the nonprofit sector, of course, as you might expect. But many nonprofits, those that are on the front lines, those like Second Harvest that were on the ground today on River Street and Senior Citizens Inc. and Family Promise. There are so many entities that are actually working now harder than ever, 7 days a week, morning to night, including United Way, to try and get the resources we need to the people who need them. I know for a fact, there are some nonprofits that were looking at, making a decision about layoffs that would have been the majority of their workforce. Before that announcement of PPP, and now they've applied and they believe that it will allow them to hold on. Now, none of us know what the future holds, and every week it seems to be another week. But for now, that has been making a difference, and certainly we're all looking forward to seeing the unemployment crank up and those stimulus checks. And that's not going to solve every problem by any stretch, and we know that, which is why we're raising money and why we're trying to get those dollars to the people who need it.
For sure. So Jennifer, from that banking perspective in the industry, you touched on this, that a lot of folks are starting to take advantage of some of the CARES Act mechanisms and apply for some of these loans and advances. What is the bank's role in that process? How is the bank able to respond to some of the questions? I can imagine that some folks are coming directly to you as their financial institution for their source of information. Just describe for us how the banking industry is responding to this new world.
I know at South we rolled out the SBA PPP program very quickly, so we had to turn it, learn it, figure it out, how our process would work to spin them out efficiently, so our customers are in the beginning of the queue. That's the whole thing, is you got to be first in line or the money's going to run out. I know I spoke with a fellow banking friend of mine who said that they had 28,000 applications in a week, and they are rolling in faster than they can possibly process it. So it's just really a matter of how much you can process. So I kind of have laughed at you have to find some humor in all this, and you look at Facebook and you see people at their home working from home, and most of them look bored out of their minds, and I'm going, I want that person right now, because it's burning the midnight oil from in the financial world right now, and it's all hands on deck to make it work. And then to add disruption of working from home and not having face-to-face contact with your coworkers and the things that make it really easy for us and our comfort levels, to have that stripped away makes it very stressful. And so tensions are high. You've got customers with high tensions. It really wears on you emotionally and physically. So there's an aspect there that I don't think people, we always talk about the economic impacts and all the technical impacts, but there's a psychological impact too on all of this. And so we have, as an employer, we have to find ways to kind of decompress people, stay in contact virtually somehow so that they can continue to perform, because our customers rely on us performing and delivering. And so that's been the biggest challenge with this. The biggest hurdle for us is going to be something we can't control, and is when the money runs out. And that's the biggest concern right now. Is we almost are concerned that every application we're processing from now on is in vain, because we don't know if the money's going to even be there.
Absolutely. Like we've already talked about, the uncertainty is prevalent right now.
The Treasury just released a few minutes ago that the PPP loans are exhausted.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're already there, right? So I think some businesses were just going through that decision-making process and probably just coming towards reaching that conclusion that was something that they needed to seek. And now that's devastating news to hear that.
All applications are closed, as well as new lender applications closed.
Wow. Thank you for that update.
That I don't think people realize too in the ag world is that 80% of farmers rely on non-farm income. They're not farmers for full time. They have other sources of income, be it from a spouse who has another job in the real world or the other world. So those jobs are what are going to impact the farmer's ability to repay, which is going to impact their ability to continue to do what they do to put food and fiber on your tables. And that's the growing concern, is the long-term impact this could have. There could be some farms that shut down completely because there's no way for them to continue business.
Absolutely. And it's scary to think about that. And, last month, which seems like a million years ago, that our Leadership Southeast Georgia class was live in Bullitt County and exploring the agricultural business as well as the world of education, both of which are in dramatically different worlds right now. So thinking of the forward perspective, right? So for each of you to consider, just with such a dependence on certain industries in our region, whether it be tourism from Michael's perspective or ag, what do we anticipate being our reality going forward? How do we need to change how we do business in some of these industries? And probably a question for Brant is, are we therefore going to be compelled to being forced into searching for new industries in which our region can thrive, given the impact to some of our core industries that we already have? So maybe if we could start with Brant and kind of get your perspective on the big picture. Are we going to need to explore other industries? And then maybe come to Michael about your perspective of tourism specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is going to be an opportunity for reshoring back to America. I think this is no secret that dealing with the Chinese has been very difficult. And I don't know if everybody else got the email from our senator here earlier about, the Chinese, they've hid this virus from us, they knew about it. But my point is, there's going to be opportunity. I think a lot of manufacturers will be pulling out of China, be coming back. There'll be opportunities for us to locate, especially pharmaceutical, biomedical, things of that nature. We can't rely on the Chinese anymore. So if we get some more of this reshoring, I think that it is a great opportunity from the economic development point of view, as opposed to the traditional warehouse distribution or your traditional manufacturing. It is those industries that we've always wanted. Every community would like to have a pharmaceutical company locate. So I think we're going to start seeing those opportunities. I personally think the government's going to require it. And so how that works, I don't know. But I do think we're going to have a change of focus, and that's going to be a positive change for us.
Michael, coming to you.
Yeah, for us, it's frankly, it's a little early to tell, right? It's all the crystal ball of, what's it going to look like. when are antibody tests going to be available, and what is that ultimately going to prove? What's the actual contagion? What's the actual mortality rate? How long will we continue to make this a moral issue, right? And that is, it's a sort of a dangerous situation we're in. For those people that are saying out loud, hey, I want to open my business, they're being told that they're putting profit over people's lives. Nobody wants to step forward and deal with that sort of flack, especially in a social media time when they're trying to provide for themselves and for others. So that's we're going to have to calm down, which is going to have to happen sort of on its own. The fear that's present, and I'm not saying the fear is unwarranted. I'm not making that argument at all, but that has to sort of come back down. This will create some different technology sectors, and people will be forced or very comfortable with embracing more technology. I had a meeting late last night about talking about the new normal within the industry and what's that going to look like. And people were talking about the key apps on their phones, right? Hilton, you can download their app and you get into your room that way. Well, I've never used that technology before, and lots of other people don't like that technology. That's about to get super popular. Right, you're going to see people, they're going to be excited when they go into a restaurant and the menu's available on an app rather than being handed a piece of paper. So that will push some new technology. That's great for developers. That's great for innovators. That's great for designers who are going to want these apps to look incredible. Certainly, I agree with Brant that we're going to see probably a lot of change in manufacturing. Right? You think about the supplies, paper goods, and soft goods that are used in my industry. We buy more towels than anybody, including my wife, which is amazing. But we're going to see a lot of that change of where that's getting procured from everything from soaps, shampoos, conditioners to terries to linen, so on and so forth. Linens are typically Middle Eastern. Terry is typically Middle Eastern and finalized in China. I think that's going to change. And I think what a lot of people can't see that I've been able to uniquely see these last couple of weeks and working directly with GEMA on product sourcing for PPE in the state and so on and so forth is frankly what the Chinese government has done to stall PPE. We have millions and millions of pieces of PPE and ventilators and masks that have been sitting in the port of Shanghai for now 4 weeks because Chinese custom will not clear them to come over to the United States. There's a lot of that too. So there's a feeling of vindictiveness that's happening. And again, I want to underscore that's a feeling of vindictiveness by the Chinese government that is going to create some changes in America's spending, buying, and there was a made in the USA trend that we saw some time ago. You're about to see that come back in a very, very serious way, I think.
Yeah, I think those are really good points. And maybe, we talk about the light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. And if the bring manufacturing facilities back to US based, a boost into the technology sector are two things that I think that we can look to. But Bryn, what about you from a nonprofit perspective? What do we see as the future there and what we anticipate? How does the business change for the work of United Way or really any nonprofit?
Well, I think like Michael said, it is, evolving every single day and a little early to be sure. And I would hesitate to make any predictions about even our fall fundraising campaign, our fall United Way campaign. So, but I have to say that I'm cautiously optimistic. I know that sounds crazy with all the bad news and all that we're hearing here on this call, but I do believe that from a nonprofit perspective, the fact that we have built in this country a really strong social services infrastructure, maybe not as strong as it needs to be yet, but I think that the value and the role of our nonprofits is being witnessed and appreciated, and I hope that that will not be lost as we move into economic recovery at all. So I know it is very difficult for nonprofits, just like it is for small business and in the hospitality industry. And specifically, I know that there are nonprofits whose doors will close. And whether or not they'll come back, I don't know. But I do believe there is, I have felt, and certainly, the conversations we're having every day related to our COVID Rapid Response Fund and what we're seeing as far as commitment to the campaign from last year and making good on pledges from last year into this year already, I am very hopeful that people see and appreciate and recognize the role of nonprofits in our community, in our state, in our country, and that we're going to see. I wouldn't begin, as I said, to predict our goal number for fall, but I feel positively about our nonprofits relationship in society and in the economy, and I feel like we're going to be okay.
Nice. Jennifer, from that ag perspective, well, really from maybe both perspectives that you bring from the world of agriculture in your community, as well as just being a small business owner as well in your community, what do you anticipate how your industry may change? How will agricultural business change throughout this process? And then just being a small business owner, what do you anticipate as some of your new normal?
So I think the biggest thing on the ag side is going to be that people are going to want to know more about where their food's coming from. And I do think that they're going to want more transparency in knowing where that piece of food that they are eating putting in their mouth came from. I do agree that it's going to be a lot of made in the USA. They're going to want things that are grown in the USA. I think we're going to rely heavily on exports to continue to get that out. And then the other thing is I do anticipate that there'll be some urbanization. So a lot of people are going to realize that living in New York City is probably not a good idea, or you have a lot of confined people piled on top of each other, and maybe I need to move out in the country. So I think you'll see people moving out of big cities some. I think then that's going to create opportunity for land sales for folks to, and maybe even ag. People may want to get out in the country and grow something while they're out there. I do think it's going to make people realize the importance of ag. I think that it's easy just to go to the grocery store and pick something up. It's not quite as easy as it used to be. I myself have grown my own little garden in the backyard just as a way for me to appreciate it a little more. But I do think farmers are going to have to diversify. They are going to have to find more ways to diversify and use technology and AI to try to rely less on the human capital and more on technology to do some of the jobs, because it's just the nature of the beast. I do from a small business restaurant. I agree. I think some of the cleanliness and the things that we do to maintain and show that we are doing all the things to keep people safe and healthy are going to have to be more visible for people to be a patron of our businesses. We're going to have to get creative in using technology, curbside and home delivery. We may have to find other ways to do e-commerce. For the bakery side, it might be we have to sell cheesecakes and breads for shipment and delivery rather than people come and picking them up, which could be then an opportunity. From our Ag South business side, I think it's going to make us, again, I think this is good stuff. I think it's going to make us realize that not every job has to come in the office to work, and it might even be better that they telecommute. I personally, in my job, I'm more efficient at home than I am at the office because I get less distractions, and I'm able to focus really on what I need to do. I do think it's going to make us use technologies more to connect to one another. It's going to also, this is kind of a thing, it's bad for the person but good for the business, is a lot of these knowledge keepers of all this knowledge that are planning to retire soon may not be able to now. They've lost a lot of money in the stock market. They may have to push their retirement out some. It's good for us in the fact that we have this store of knowledge still able to transfer that knowledge before they leave. It gives us a little more time to do that. Bad for them because they may have to delay retirement. And so there's some of those things too that we don't really think about that could definitely impact people retiring now. So it's very, I think there's some good things that are going to come out of this. It's going to make us work smarter. It's just very challenging that change. Nobody likes it. In a normal environment where there's not a pandemic going on, it's hard in itself. But to add the health concerns and the family struggles and working with kids running around and dogs barking in the background is a challenge on top of it. So it's just keeping people focused and encouraged to continue to do what they need to do.
Absolutely. You've raised a lot of good issues that I think all of us are grappling with in our new reality, right? You mentioned, we're schooling our kids at home and the kids are running wild and the dog's barking and we're trying to work and all of these stressors. And then if you have financial stressors in the home as well, that's just another layer of anxiety. So this was a great question that came from our class in one of the evals, and I want to close by asking each of you this question. Is, this is a group in particular in our Leadership Southeast Georgia group that we're used to being very heavily involved in the community and doing things and being active and helping, whether we be serving on nonprofit boards or leading a fundraiser or what have you. How can this group or any regional leader or community leader really help make a positive impact right now? I think while acknowledging all of those things that you just described, Jennifer. So Bryn, if we can start with you and then continue on through our panel, what can our Leadership Southeast Georgia group be doing right now to help from your perspective, from the nonprofit United Way perspective?
Well, one of the things that I've been amazed by is the creativity of our nonprofits and certainly the United Way agencies that we partner with most closely. They're doing some really innovative things, just like businesses are, to address the needs of the people that they're serving. If you follow the United Way of the Coastal Empire on Facebook, if you follow the United Way of Coastal Georgia based in Brunswick, or the United Way in Southeast Georgia based in Bullock County, if you follow those Facebook pages, if you follow them online, we are constantly sharing information about needs in our community. For example, I just saw yesterday that Grace House, which is a 32-bed home for men, for homeless men, needs, toiletries and T-shirts and, things like that. Items that somebody can easily pick up if they're grocery shopping. I say easily, if they can, and gather and drop off. And they are helping, in a way that is still safe for them, safe for those organizations and those people that they're helping. That's just one example of many, so many. So if you follow that information, if you plug in, there are going to be so many opportunities to help, opportunities you can choose that move you and that you can do in a way that fits best with your lifestyle. And of course, we would love anyone who can to give to the United Way of the Coastal Empire's Rapid Response Fund. Those dollars are going 100% to support people who need help standing in this gap, however long this gap is.
Awesome. Thank you, Bryn, for that. Brant, from that big picture perspective, from the Economic Development Authority, what are you seeing as suggestions that you would give out to this group to help stimulate the economy or just to help within our local communities?
Well, I think there's so many different ways from a individual point of view. There's ways to donate. If you could donate your time. There's obviously so many different organizations. United Way is just one of them on the coastal empire that you can give your time. Also, obviously, even though I know it's tough to actually donate money at this particular point in time, there's plenty of people still out there that are not being affected that can give. And also, I was heard yesterday somebody came up with great suggestions, like for example, the homeless, they always need socks. You can always order socks to be delivered to your door, and you can always give those out when you see homeless people. So from an individual point of view, there's always ways we can help, especially faith-based organizations to your local church. But I think it's going to be incumbent upon some of the larger companies that even though everybody's being affected by this, they're going to have to step up. They're going to have to help out in donations. It's going to take some of the larger companies, and a lot of them are already doing that. But I think we're going to see that trickle down effect that companies are going to have to step up. They're going to have to donate. They're going to have to carry a heavier load. So it's really incumbent upon all of us, from everybody from the larger companies all the way down to individuals, in order for us to pull ourselves out of this. And even talking to my daughter about it, how can she help and what can she do? And it fills that void that we have, and we all should fill that void because it's there in us because we're all suffering. So there's really no reason not to help, and we can all do something.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brant. Jennifer, from your perspective, things that we can do to help, whether it be ag or your, small town bakery, what are some of the things that these leaders can be doing?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things. One is, there's a lot of folks who are unemployed right now. That's idle time. And I'll give you an example. My son was furloughed for a period of time, and he's bored out of his mind and it's driving me nuts. So I've actually pushed him on to Open Hearts Community Mission to help them with anything they need on site. So encouraging people who have nothing to do right now to get out there and help these folks that need us right this moment. The other thing is a lot of these small community organizations really rely on events or things where there are mass people gathering. So for example, the chocolate run, had this been happening within February, one of the main things that Open Hearts relies on is the chocolate run, the money that comes from that would have been gone. All that money would have been in vain. And so they're going to have to find additional resources to bring money in that they're going to lose. The Breast Cancer Foundation here in Statesboro was scheduled to have a Pink Power Run. They pushed it out, but who knows if that's going to even be able to happen. And it's a huge resource. So if people have ideas of ways to raise money virtually, or to supplement the income they lose from event-based type activities that bring funds into their organizations. And the other thing is grants. I think you're going to see an increase in the number of grants that people apply for, and it's going to be harder for people. They'll be fighting for some of these grants because before they were using an event to their own mechanisms to get that money, and now they're going to look for other sources outside. So there's some opportunities there to share those things with groups that that might help them replace some of the funds they may lose.
Great suggestion. And particularly if there are folks that are, high school, college age, young adults that are now back at home and looking for opportunities to occupy their time. I think reaching out to some of the nonprofits to see what they can do virtually, I think that's a great suggestion. Michael, I saved you for last in particular because I know, as you described, the tourism industry has been so hard hit throughout this process. And I know many of those on the call want to know what we can do to assist. So same question to you. What can our Leadership Southeast Georgia group be doing to support the tourism industry?
So I will start as everybody. I want to say everybody had a great thing to say about finances and supporting it financially. And yes, that is a short-term way you can. One that's been very helpful to us is the United Way of the Coastal Empire. We've directed everybody towards that. We were asked, will TLC set up a fund? No, we're not. That's not what we do. That's what the United Way does. Go support them and do it in the name of tourism, or do it in the name of whatever you like, but support those. This is what they do and what they do well. The other nonprofit to look at that means a lot to me right now is America's Second Harvest. I cannot say enough about how amazing that has been. My greater ask is not financial. It's something everybody can afford to do. It's to show leadership right now. I work with a lot of politicians every day, and I've actually, found one that was decent over these years, just one. And when I'm building that relationship, I always send this picture of a plaque I saw outside of Boston. And it says, "The responsibility of those who exercise power in a democratic government is not to reflect inflamed public feeling, but help form its understanding." That's leadership. I believe in the 80-20 rule, that 20% of the people are doing 80% of the work. That's going to have to shift. Those of us who have remained on the sidelines and let other people step into the breach and fight the fire of whether it be political rhetoric that holds back help or anything like that, or really getting involved in a nonprofit or supporting a nonprofit, actually getting off our asses and actually being a part of the solution, right? That's what's going to have to change. If you're not a part of that 20%, and you're in this class, you better figure out a way to become a part of that 20%. And I can tell you, you can talk to Jennifer, Brant, and Bren and me, and we will absolutely help get you engaged to help leading this community out of it. Once this virus is over, there's a lot of work still to be done. And there will be a lot of nitpicking and second guessing and Monday morning quarterback, delete Facebook, delete all that, get to work. Our community needs it. Our friends, our neighbors, they need people who are actually working, not talking about it on Facebook. Become that 20% and help us make that 20% the 30% and then the 40%, because that is what's going to be most helpful in the long term.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. When do you announce your run for public office?
Never in a million years. There's not enough love, money, or scotch in this world to get me to do that.
Well, I know each of you are playing an integral role in your communities, and we so greatly appreciate your time this morning. Brant and Michael and Bryn and Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us on this morning's panel. To our Leadership Southeast Georgia 2020 class members, you are a class unlike any other. You can definitely go ahead and claim most interesting class ever, because we've certainly not faced this type of scenario with any other Leadership Southeast Georgia class. A couple of notes on what's coming. Again, this is our third session today on April 16th of the virtual Leadership Southeast Georgia. We continue to watch day in and day out what our activities will be like in June and in August. And of course, we're taking that day by day. In May, we have 2 sessions planned for you. So the next time that we come together for a formal session will be on May 7th. And we are taking one of our objectives from the program that is more the traditional economic development, not in context of our global pandemic. And it's really a case study exploration of what are the compelling factors that compel an organization to locate within our region. And that's been sort of a standing objective for the program for the past couple of years. So we will be pursuing that with a panel discussion similar to the Zoom format on May 7th. And then on May 14th, one of the things that we bring you throughout the program is the professional development component. And we had planned again to bring with me into the program Amy Condon, who is of the Refinery Writing Studio and a wonderful contributor to Leadership Southeast Georgia past couple of years, and that her and I co-facilitate the business writing practices. And it's a really great professional development component. We will be bringing you that on May 14th, so you can put those on your calendar. We're also looking at adding a more of a casual social interaction for our Leadership Southeast Georgia group. These have been very informative. We felt with all going on right now, you needed to hear some experts address the group as to what they're doing and their different perspectives on responding to the global pandemic. And now I think we'd like to take a breather from that and provide you as the class with some of those opportunities just to reconnect with your fellow classmates and share some updates. So more information coming on that soon. But again, the next formal program scheduled will be on May 7th. And with that, I will wish everyone a very happy Thursday. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you to all of our panelists. We really appreciate you. And stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.